So I think I'll start with the session. So today's topic is reflective practices in classroom. Okay, and I'm so thrilled to welcome both of you for today's webinar, where we will be dealing into a very crucial concept of education, that is integrating reflective practices into curriculum and pedagogy. Okay, one is just doing calling that, okay, we do reflection, we ask children what did they learn today, but instead how about we connect it into our curriculum and pedagogy, that it becomes our day to day routine. Yeah, so our journey today is centered around the idea that, embracing this reflection, or having reflection as part of your curriculum and pedagogy, is not just an enhancement of your curriculum, but it is more like a fundamental component for creating a more comprehensive and a more effective learning experience for your learners. So let's begin by acknowledging, we all know the rapidly and the evolving landscape of education, and we know that all the traditional methods, the chalk and talk method, where the teacher is only talking, children are only taking the information and writing notes, is all reshaping, is all evolving by new technologies like chat gpt, canva, right? It is involving because now there is a diverse student population, and I feel there is a large growing emphasis on something called individualized learning or personalized learning. And for personalized learning, reflection becomes extremely important, because unless a child reflects on what they are learning, how will you personalize that learning experience for them, right? So why reflective practice matters? Because reflective practices are an intentional, if I have to give you in a definition, it is an intentional act of contemplating and evaluating one's teaching and learning experiences that have become indispensable in navigating this dynamic education field. Okay, this is a very, very uh, definition, so I had to read it. But it is like, it is act of constantly analyzing, constantly working on yourself, if I have to put it in a very layman's term. Now, so today we will explore and understand that these practices are not like an add-ons in the curriculum, okay, or in your pedagogy, but it is the most essential elements of your curriculum, and it is important for both educators and learners. Now, there are two types of reflective practices. One is for educators. So, for educators, it is like when you integrate reflective practices in your teaching journey, it is more like empowerment, because it's all about continuously you are honing teaching strategies, you're working on teaching strategies, you are accepting and embracing adaptability. If I have to give you an example, when COVID came in, right, we all adapted to online learning, right? So we are through reflection, why it happened, because then we reflected, all of us, that okay, now we cannot have physical classroom, how do we do online classroom, how can we make it more better? So we constantly reflected. So, and it, when you do reflection, you are also very staying attuned with the diverse learners in your classroom. And I believe, if a teacher does not, or if a teacher who is constantly reflecting on her teaching practices, right, or is constantly refining her teaching practices, for her the professional development is intrinsically linked. The school will not have to send the teacher for outside workshop. If I, as a teacher, I am a teacher and I'm constantly reflecting on myself, and I know, okay, I have to work on my classroom management workshop skills, I will not wait for the school to send me for a workshop, I will only go and do the workshop. So I feel the professional development of educators is intrinsically linked to constantly reflecting and refining their teaching practices. Now, this is so one part is reflection for educators. Now, today, what we are going to focus is on the second part, that is reflection for children, right? Because I'm sure now, with so much of awareness, many educators are already doing the reflection. So, I want to emphasize more on reflective practices for children, because I feel that education or teaching per se is a collaboration between learners and the teacher. What happens right now is, if we are not doing reflective practices, what happens is, right now teacher is creating the lesson plan and she is implementing the lesson plan in the classroom, right, without involving children in it. So it's a very one way work that she's doing. But when we are using it as a, when we are working in collaboration with children, the impact is much more. So, reflective practices actually empower our learners, our students, to be more active participants in their own learning journey. So, when we incorporate reflection in curriculum and pedagogy, we are creating an environment where students, listen to this is my one of the most favorite line, where when we are integrating reflective practices in our curriculum and pedagogy, we foster a learning environment where children are not mere just recipient of information, but they are co-creators of knowledge. Now, whatever the IB talks about, student agency, autonomy, is nothing but when we involve children in their own learning journey. And for that, our reflective practices is the most important. Now, how will you work on yourself when you have not reflected on, okay, where do I have to work? In which area I need to work on? Right? So through this reflective practices, our aim is to move beyond the conventional method and conventional understanding of education and accept more comprehensive approach. So reflective practices actually provide us with a lens through which we can analyze, we can adapt, and we can elevate our curriculum and pedagogical approaches. Okay, so ultimately, that's what a goal is. Everyone who is feel wants to transform into an experience that is not only informative for children, but it is more transformative, right? So before we get into deep dive into the discussion, today's plan is, let me just share my screen. um, yeah, are you all able to see my screen?
Yes, we are able to see.
Okay, lovely. So today's
Yes.
agenda is what are reflective practices, which we've spoken about, why are reflective practices important, and of course, then there is a separate session, a separate segment on how do we integrate reflective practices first in our curriculum and then in our pedagogy. And also, along with that, I'll be providing some examples for pre-primary, some for primary, some for middle school, wherever I could add on more examples I have added. We'll also look at some of the implementation strategies, right? And also, we will also look at certain considerations that the educators should do for effective integration of these reflective practices. So, by the end of this webinar, our aspiration is that each participant, whether you are attending physically or you are watching the recording, our aim is that after the webinar, the participant is leaves with a very deeper understanding of how these reflective practices can be seamlessly woven into the fabric of curriculum and pedagogy, and most importantly, enriching the whole learning experience or the educational experience for both educators and learners. So thank you once again for joining this session, and let's start with why reflective practices. Okay, so the first point is Enhanced learning outcomes. Learning outcomes are also called as learning objectives, learning goals, and it is part of every lesson plan. So, reflective practices actually serve as a catalyst for enhanced learning outcomes because it fosters a deeper understanding of the content that you are going to teach children. Now, when students engage in reflection, they move beyond rote memorization. They are learning the concept not through rote memorization, but they are actually comprehending the concept. Okay, so through introspection, through analysis, they connect new information to their existing knowledge or their prior knowledge, which creates a more integrated and a meaningful understanding. So this depth of understanding contributes not only to the improved academic performance, like higher grades and higher scores, but it also works on the ability of the child to apply knowledge in the real world context, right? Additionally, reflective practices promote improved retention of information. Now, I have trained so many teachers and I've visited so many schools, and the biggest challenge that most of them are facing today is actually retention of information. We are giving information to children, but they are not able to remember the information. Just a heads up, are you all able to see the screen even now, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we are
Okay.
able to see.
Lovely, lovely. So let's understand how reflective practices promote improved retention. Now, by encouraging students, so when children are reflecting on their learning, so you have introduced the concept today, and you Monday to Friday you have introduced the concept, and then Friday you are reflecting. Children are reflecting on their learning. What they are actually doing is they are revisiting the concept and they are doing a recap of the concept. Now when this happens, the consolidation of knowledge becomes more relevant, more intentional, and more active process. So this reflective engagement actually helps them solidify the information in memory, because you are why we do recap, right? Why do we do revision? So that the information is retained. Yeah. So when children are actually reflecting on what they have learned, they are doing a recap, they are doing a revision, which actually helps them retain the information in their mind. Okay. Now, and of course, in the long term, it will also help them recall what they have learned, recall this information. So, the third point is the application of knowledge. We all have studied so many concepts, like, right, like trigonometry. We've learned Pythagoras and all the formulas. But what happened was we didn't know where to use this knowledge. So again, the retention became of information reduced because we couldn't apply it in our life. So nowadays, all the boards like CBSE, Cambridge board, CBSE board, IB board are more focusing on application of knowledge. So reflective practices actually provide students with the opportunity to consider how this information that I have gained that I have acquired information that I have acquired or gained can be applied in different context. So if I've learned about colors or if I've learned about emotions, how can I apply it in different scenarios? So this application oriented reflection enhances the transferability of the knowledge, ensuring that students are not just, again, passive recipients of the information, but are more active learners in the whole process. So if I have to give you an example, after completing a unit on some historical event, our students can engage in a reflective essay. So children can write a reflective essay where they analyze the importance and the significance of the events that they have studied. Then they can explore how these historical events or occurrences have influenced or may have influenced our contemporary society. So when children are doing this reflective exercise, it not only reinforces their understanding of the content, but also encourages critical thinking and the application of historical knowledge to the current context or the current trends. If I have to give you an example of, say, science class, so we can also have students, maintain a reflective journal throughout a semester, throughout the unit, and the end of each of experiment that the children have done in the science class, they record their observations, they note down what were the unexpected outcomes, what were the proposed explanations, all of that. Now, what happens is, in this process, it actually encourages them to think deeply about the scientific method, and they learn from their experiences, and then, they can also refine their approach to future experiments. So, that was one of them. And then next is social interaction. Now, whenever you are having any reflective practices, it's important that children actually share those reflections with their classmate. It could be, it could be group, it could be just a partner work, because that's where it sparks social interaction. Children get comfortable talking to each other, and it actually promotes their social development also. So that is one thing. And again, student autonomy, student basically reflective practices also help them in taking responsible being responsible for their own learning. So when we provide our children or our learners with the opportunity to share their accomplishment, to share their struggles, their moments of confusion, it encourages them to focus on their own strengths and weaknesses. And in doing so, they become aware of the skills that they have developed and the ones that they need to work on a little bit more. So that's when they become responsible for their own learning. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. That is integrating reflective practices into our curriculum. Now, the first point is embedding reflection in our lesson plans. So, the objective here is to weave or to integrate reflection seamlessly into everyday learning activities. That also helps, like, children to cultivate a habit of metacognition and critical thinking. What is metacognition? Can anyone Has anyone heard about it? Would anyone like to share their thoughts? What is metacognition? Have you heard about it? Anyone? Okay. Metacognition is nothing but thinking about thinking. Now, if I have to give you an example, it sounds very weird or an absurd, but when you lose out on your key or your mobile phone, what you actually do is you start tracking it back. Okay, I came from my room, I went to my work, then I went to the shop, and then when I went to this another shop, and maybe I lost it there. So when you are actually doing this is nothing but metacognition. Okay. Now let me give you some example of how we can integrate reflection in our lesson plans. So for example, in high school literature class, after the discussion about a novel's protagonist or the main character, you can engage students in reflective writing exercise, so they can write about how their understanding of the character has evolved throughout the discussion. And this not only reinforces the comprehension but also encourages students to consider different perspectives of different people and analyze their own thought process. Now, here, even if you're doing, for if I have to give you a pre-primary example, now, even if you're doing any art activity where children are drawing something or children are creating something, Right now what we do is we just create it. Children are doing dabbing or printing, and then we are just leaving it. Okay, but for example, you have asked them to just draw what they saw today morning, or they've gone for a field trip and you have asked them to draw. I mean, how the reflection can come into is you can have 2 3 prompts for them. Okay, how did you feel when we went here, right? Or if you're doing a story time with children, let them express, okay, how do you think this main character felt in the story? How did you feel about the character? That's when they are reflecting. Okay, so any activity that you are making children do in the class, when you are adding it in your lesson plan, you have to have 2 3 prompts. Okay, even if you're doing a dress up activity, even if you're doing a play activity, you should have 2 3 prompts that, and they're ready. Prompts are nothing but questions that you will ask children, that will help them to reflect. Okay, so it has to be mandatory added in your lesson plan. Even if you are asking them to create something through blocks, it has to be there. Okay, second is capstone reflection projects. Now I think after every unit most of us have a culmination activity, right? For example, you're doing community helpers, so then at the end of the theme you will have children dressing up like community helpers, right? So here, what happens is children come, they dress up, they just speak 4 5 lines, and they leave, right? But instead we need to change our approach. We want children to reflect on, okay, how did I feel when I was this community helper, when I enacted as a this community helper. Okay, they need to reflect on their own emotions. They have to reflect, okay, what do you think, as a community helper, how would you help other people? These are the reflecting questions, right? So the implementation strategy for this point is that you can incorporate a periodic checkpoints for reflection throughout a unit. And especially grade 1 and above, I feel we should have reflective journal for children to write down their thoughts, and this journal can then serve as a foundation for this capstone project, right? For pre-primary, the teachers can listen the answer and then write down in their diary. That becomes the anecdotal records as well. Also, if you in pre-primary you are asking them to draw anything, it will not be perfect. When you ask them what is this, they would not be able to understand. But what happens is when you are asking them, okay, what is this, write down their observations, write down what they are telling you. This is how reflection starts from early years, right? And the third point is interdisciplinary reflection. Now we all know what is interdisciplinary. Basically, when we are doing one theme, it can be connected to different subjects. It cannot be just one subject. If you're doing say animals, it cannot be only in EVS, it can be connected to different uh, topics. So recognizing that, this interconnectedness nature of knowledge, the interdisciplinary reflection encourages students to see that relationship between different subjects, and it can be applied, it can be applied across diverse domains. So when I am doing animal as a topic, okay, what am I doing in language arts? Then there will be a math related activity, there will be a SEL, social emotional learning related activity, there will be a fine motor development activity which connects, there will be a activity related to history, related to geography. So it is all connected. So if we are doing in a middle school, if they are doing history and language art class, students can engage in a project of, say, of a historical event. And then this project can incorporate elements of geography, because students can, even if it's an historical event, students can create maps to illustrate the locations involved, right? So in their reflective component, student needs to discuss how their understanding of history was actually beneficial or deepened through the geographical context, right, provided by the geography subject. So for this, the implementation strategy is that teachers need to, across subjects, the teachers need to collaborate, come up with some projects that are interdisciplinary in nature, and then every subject teacher needs to create reflection prompts that can be added in the lesson plan. Now, this approach, if you're following this approach, it emphasizes the relevance and interconnectedness of knowledge. Okay. Now, teachers also need to consider certain things. So, when you are scaffolding the whole reflection, it has to be age appropriate, and you need to provide support and guidance as needed, because some children might find it difficult to reflect because they're not used to it. And I think the most important thing that when we are implementing reflective practices in classroom is to create a very non-judgmental environment. Because if teacher is being judgmental, or if my classmates are laughing, I won't be comfortable in sharing my reflections, right? I am always scared, and I always want to share the right things, or the right what is being expected, what others want to hear, but not what I am feeling it. So I think what we need to consider, especially when we are integrating in our curriculum reflective practices, that our environment when children are sharing, that has to be non-judgmentable, right? And then you can also incorporate some silent reflection activities. So when I say silent in reflection activities, you can ask the main question. For example, there's a topic and you can ask the main question to the children, and you can ask them to reflect. Or you can, if you have finished teaching them, you can ask them to show their reflection, whether they have understood, not understood a little bit, right? And so these are silent reflections. Basically, silent reflection is nothing but I am on my own reflecting on something, right? I am quietly reflecting on myself. So it could be answering the question, it could be through thumbs up, thumbs down, all of that, right? So now let's look at the last segment, that is integrating um, reflective practices into our pedagogy, right? So the most important thing here, which I'm sure everyone is doing it, is incorporating formative assessments. Because the use of formative assessment not only gauges the students understanding, but it also provides a very structured opportunity for them to reflect on their learning progress. So for example, in pre-primary setting, after you have created a art activity, again children engage in formative assessment, where they draw or verbally express basically what they have enjoyed most about the activity, what they didn't like about the activity, right? So this simple reflection allows them to connect emotions with the learning experience. Yeah. So if I have to give you a implementation strategy here, so teacher can design reflective prompts that are aligned with age and developmental stage of the students. So you have to be very thorough about the developmentally appropriate practices. So if I'm adding this prompt in the lesson plan, is it age appropriate or not, right? And for higher children, these prompts could also include questions about what they found more challenging, or what strategies will help them succeed, and if they are doing the same activity next time, how differently they would do it, right? So for pre-primary, in your prompts it will more be about what how did they feel, which activity they liked the most, which they didn't like it. But for higher grades it will be more specific in terms of what they found challenging, what are the strategies that they can help them succeed, and how they can do it differently next time. Second is Socratic seminars and class discussions. So when you implement, or when you're using Socratic seminars and class discussions, it actually creates a platform for students to engage in a very reflective dialogue. They can articulate their own thoughts, and they also learn to consider and accept multiple perspectives. So if you are doing, for example, in primary literature class or an English class, student can participate in a Socratic seminar after reading a story. So they reflect on the characters motivations, characters actions, expressing their viewpoints while considering the perspectives that are shared by their classmates. So again, if I have to talk about the developmentally appropriate practices for pre-primary, when you are doing story, it is more about feelings. How did they like the story? How did they feel about the character? Right? But in primary, it is more about characters motivation, characters action, where the student is also expressing their viewpoints. If I was in the place of the character, I would do this. So that is learner reflecting and sharing their viewpoints. Right? Now, so in a middle school science class, students can engage in a classroom discussion or a Socratic seminar, about, for example, about ethical implications of scientific discovery. Now, when they are discussing about different discoveries, everyone who is involved. So if one child, one middle school student or learner has discovered or has learned about a new discovery, and they share with others, others are also learning. So reflection is not just about what I have learned, but it is also about sharing with your classmates. Yeah. So let's look at the third point, that is student led conferences, which is gaining more popularity after IB has introduced this pedagogy in their board. So the objective here is to empower students to take ownership of their own learning, where they are reflecting on their own achievements, they are reflecting on their challenges and the goals. So in a pre-primary setting, when you are having a student-led conference, you can just display all the child's work, and the child will take parent through their works, that I did this in my English class and this is what we were learning, and I know that A makes the sound A. Right? So what happens is, and they also, in that discussion with the parent, they will also express how they enjoyed creating this whole work. So this fosters early communication skill and self awareness, because when they are sharing what they have learned with their parent, they are again reflecting on what they have learned. Okay. So in high school, if you the student led conference could be discussing about their projects that they have done. Okay, this was the topic given to us. I researched from this book or this website, or I spoke to so and so resource people, and all of this, the child is, or the student is actually discussing with the parent. Yes. So this is how it can work in different settings. And I think the most important point when it comes to reflection or implementing reflective practices is enough wait time. Now, any teacher, go to your class tomorrow, okay, and ask a question to your student, and just observe how many seconds you are waiting before you give another clue, or you move on to another child if the child is not answering the question. Surprisingly, you will be amazed to see that, to observe that you will wait hardly for 2 seconds. If the child does not answer within 2 seconds, we automatically either start giving them more prompts and clue, or we move on to another child. Now, if we want children to reflect, we need to give them enough wait time. After you have asked question, they need to at least wait for 5 to 7 seconds to listen to your question, to understand it, to interpret it, and then frame an answer for it, irrespective whether it is an recap question or a new question. Okay, so I think I have come to the end of the session. But since we are talking so much about reflection, it is important that we also reflect today. So I'll just stop sharing the screen, and all of you can, in chat section, I have shared a Padlet link. Can you please click on the link if possible? Can you click and the Padlet will open? I think it will be like a purple color. Yeah. Can we have the cameras on now so that I know I'm talking with people and not with white boxes? So I'll also try sharing my screen. This is how it looks. Um, yeah, this is how your screen will look. So I know both of you are not directly into the classroom, but also if you could just first answer this question: how often do you currently integrate reflective practices? It could be even in your own life. If you don't want to talk about the classroom, let's talk about in your life. So are you able to kind of click? Yeah, I got one vote.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. I was
lovely.
able to vote. Yeah.
Okay, okay, awesome, awesome. Often, rarely. Okay. And so we also need to, I also want you to retain the information that you have gained today. So for that we need to reflect. um, if you could just answer this question: what did you find most interesting or useful in this webinar? If you could just write your name, and then kind of add your answer and then publish it, it will, everyone would be able to see your answer. I would love to hear what you felt interesting, or what you felt more useful. What was your aha moment?
Greshma, while everybody is answering that, I have a question, if I may please ask it.
Yeah,
So, yeah, so I am very much interested in, you talked about reflective journal for students, right? So,
yeah,
I understand that it would be a very good practice for middle schoolers and definitely students in the high school to create a journal and maintain it. But I'm very inquisitive about how a reflective journal looks for primary section, because they are still developing their writing skills. They are putting their thoughts, they are aligning their thoughts. So how do we encourage them, how do we guide them to create a reflective journal?
yeah. So in fact, in our school, in Pratna World School, we have created reflective journal. So it is, we call it a student journal,
Okay.
and there are different pages for children to reflect. And so, of course, in grade one, children are not complete, so they can definitely write some thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay, but there is also an option for
Hmm.
them to draw what they are feeling or what
Okay.
they have learned. Okay, so I think that is more impactful, especially for grade one. There is no reflective for pre-primary. Of course, it's very difficult. For primary, we can definitely have it, and when they're reflecting, we don't have to focus on the formation of sentence or the grammatical errors or the
Right.
spelling,
Right.
right? Even if they are able to just write few words and explain what they are feeling, even that is fine. But this is how we develop the habit, right? And there is also option of drawing and explaining how they are feeling.
Hmm.
Yeah, so this can be done for primary, and of course from grade 2 their writing skills keep enhancing and they are able to kind of express more.
Yeah, I think the intent is to make them actually take a few moments to sit, even if they just draw a figure, initially. But over a period of time, they'll get in the habit of taking a few moments after each lesson and
Yeah.
actually putting their thoughts, summarize their thoughts on paper.
Yeah, yeah. So reflective practices is a very important element of the school that I'm working in. We've added that in our curriculum and in our pedagogy, and we've already created like a student journal. So this is something that it's not just I'm taking workshop on, but this is something that I've seen it implementing. I've implemented in my own life, but I've also and now I'm also implementing in the school that I'm working in. So let's see. Let me share the screen and see if there are any. Oh, the screen is already shared. Okay, so one answer I have got is wait time and formative assessments were the most impactful part of today's session. Thank you so much. I'm glad. Yeah, wait time is also an important point that I always mention teachers, even in the classroom management, because we should give chance for children to think and then talk. Also, when you are designing your lesson plan, I think it's important that after you have shared some bites of information, some direct instruction you've already given for 3 to 4 minutes about the topic that you are teaching children, I think it's important that we add think, pair, and share over there quickly, that okay, I have shared this information, share 2 points from this information what you have heard right now and share it with each other. So when children talk more, when they are reflecting more and they are remembering more. Yeah, so I think that is a very simple phenomena or a formula for anyone and everyone. So thank you so much. I'll just stop sharing and go back to my screen. Any questions you have, anything that you want to ask? Okay, it could be related to reflective practices, it could be related to some other topic also. I'm open to discussions.
For me, today's session was it was very good in the sense that it helped me with the what to say. Until now, for me, reflection was only writing down what worked for me and what didn't work for me. Now I
Correct.
know that all of these other things also come into reflection. I work with a handful of students directly, and because the group is small, I always try to ask them when we do a story together. I ask them who was your favorite character, or if you were in that character's shoes, then what would you do? And today I got to learn that that is part of reflection, and that's making me so
Reflection.
happy. Yeah, so
Please pat your back,
yeah.
Apurva. Yeah,
I think it's
it's a,
lovely that it can be a part of structured learning as well, and I'm so delighted to learn that it's already a part in your school. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you for sharing
yeah.
all of this with us. Yeah, thank
Thank you, Apurva. Thank you. Lalita, do you have anything to ask?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I also shared the bite. I don't know why it is not coming there in the screen.
Oh,
I said like the
oh,
yeah. Uh, I I pressed the it's published, but I don't know why it isn't published. So
no
I
problem.
said
You
like it
can
was very nice session. I really enjoyed today. I have heard about reflective practice, but this is something like an eye opener for me. Like getting into detailed information, it was so good and interestingly about this how to integrate into pedagogy is something I really liked a lot. It is very nice. So much what to say. But thank you, thanks a lot. And
especially
even I
because
have a
ma'am gave
question,
us
ma'am.
the real life
Yeah,
examples. I think it
yeah,
became
yeah,
very much easy for
that
us
is
to
really
implement.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Yes,
I have
Lalita.
a small doubt, ma'am. Like, how can we deal with this special children about this reflective practice? Is it applicable, and how to do with those children?
Yeah, it is definitely applicable with special children also. So if they are, but when they are having So sometimes children who are having special needs also have their difficult moments where they throw tantrums and they are not just in the right frame of mind. So of course that is not the right time to do the reflection, but once they are calm, they are more engaged in the activity. Once the activity is done, if you feel the child is able to, so if you feel the child is more able to express through writing, take through writing. If you feel the child is more expressive when it comes to drawing, because I've seen some special children express themselves beautifully through drawings or through what they're feeling, or everything to drawing. So we need to encourage them then to draw. There are some children who like to talk. So with them, it one depends on the case and depends on the child how they are comfortable expressing themselves, because some special needs children do not have a clear speech, which hampers their confidence. So we know that for this child, expressing through talking will be difficult, so then can the child draw? Yes, but reflective practices definitely work with them.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you. Thank you. If you have any more doubts, Apurva, you have my number. Lalita, we are connected on LinkedIn, so you can please drop a message. You want more
Yes,
reading material on this? You can let me know. I will share it. No problem.
sure, ma'am.
Uh,
Sure.
Greshma, I
Okay.
think it would be
Thank you.
good if we can share some more reading material, or some examples. Probably you can share an example of a reflective journal. That would
Yes,
also guide the teachers in how to implement it in their classes. So we can
absolutely.
we can share that in the show notes when we upload this video, and it would
Awesome.
be available for everybody to see and use also. So
Right.
it was a wonderful session, and I am glad that the teachers enjoyed. There were a few. I'm getting a few messages that they could not join, but they would be looking at the video. So
Right.
yes, that would be done.
Awesome. So I will email you the reading material and some samples and examples, so then you can share it with everyone.
Sure, sure. We'll do that.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much, Lalita, for joining, and thank you so much,
Thank you.
Kavleen ma'am, for giving me this opportunity.
No, it was our
Yes,
honor. Thank you for coming on our platform and talking about this wonderful topic. Thank you, Greshma, and thank you,
Thank
Lalita.
you. Bye.
thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.